This is the Daily Brief, one landmark court decision explained in plain English every day. Presented by FindCourtCases.com, this is your daily briefing on the law that shapes American life.
So imagine this. You're in a Florida courtroom. You've been charged with a felony breaking into a pool room.
Not a capital offense, but serious.
Right. And you are broke. You stand up. You tell the judge you can't possibly afford a lawyer, and you ask for one.
And meanwhile, the state has a trained professional prosecutor whose entire job is to convince a jury to send you to prison for 5 years.
And the judge, following the law at the time, just looks at you and says no.
You're on your own.
That moment, that denial, based purely on how much money you have or don't have, that's the core of what we're diving into. This defendant, Clarence Gideon, was suddenly up against the entire power of the government, alone.
And our mission here is to trace how his handwritten letter from a prison cell, I mean, it's incredible how that didn't just win his freedom, but totally redefined what a fair trial means in America.
This is the story of Gideon v. Wainwright from 1963.
And if you need that one sentence takeaway right now, here it is. The Supreme Court decided that if you are poor and facing criminal charges, you have a fundamental right to a lawyer.
And the state has to give you one.
The state must provide one. It's a guarantee. And to understand why, we really have to look at the legal world before this case, because it was a mess.
Okay, so let's go there. The world before Gideon. What was the rule of the road when Clarence Gideon first got charged?
Well, the charge itself was breaking and entering with intent to commit a misdemeanor. Under Florida law, that's a felony.
So serious time on the line.
Absolutely. So he shows up in court, no money, no lawyer, and asks for one. And the judge refuses.
And he wasn't being malicious, the judge. He was just following the law.
Exactly. Florida law, like most state laws then, only required a court-appointed lawyer in capital cases.
Meaning, only if you get the death penalty.
Right. If it was just 5 years in prison, you were on your own. And this was all based on the big Supreme Court precedent at the time, a case called Betts v. Brady.
Okay, so what did Betts say?
Betts v. Brady said that getting a lawyer appointed by the state was not a fundamental right unless, and this is the key part, unless there were special circumstances.
Special circumstances. That sounds incredibly vague. What does that even mean?
It was a huge loophole. The sources show it might cover someone who was, illiterate or had a severe mental impairment, or maybe the case was just wildly complex.
But not for a regular person like Gideon.
Not for a regular person who could basically function in society but know nothing about the law. And this created this patchwork of justice where, depending on the state or even the judge, you might get a lawyer or you might not. It was totally inconsistent.
So the system itself was basically a lottery. Let's talk about what that meant for Gideon himself. He had to conduct his own defense.
Can you even imagine? He was up against a trained prosecutor.
It's unbelievable.
And the sources say he actually did as well as could be expected for a layman. He tried, he made an opening statement, he cross-examined witnesses.
He really tried to be his own lawyer.
He did. He presented his own little defense argument. But, the outcome was, it was pretty much inevitable.
He was found guilty.
And sentenced to 5 years in prison. It's just,
right.
It's like asking someone to perform surgery after reading a pamphlet about it. You can't win. You don't know the rules.
And this is where the story really takes a turn. Because Gideon, from prison, did not give up.
No, he filed what's called a petition for habeas corpus.
Which is basically a challenge saying, I'm being held illegally.
Precisely. He sent it to the Florida Supreme Court, and his argument was simple. My trial was unconstitutional because I didn't have a lawyer.
The Florida court said no.
They denied him. So Gideon, with paper and a pencil from the prison library, wrote his next appeal by hand and sent it to the U.S. Supreme Court.
That is just astounding.
It really is. And the Supreme Court, which gets thousands of these, decided to take his case. And they did it specifically to reconsider Betts v. Brady.
So they were signaling that the old rule might be on the chopping block.
A huge signal. They appointed a top lawyer for Gideon, and the stage was set. The question was clear. Is it finally time to scrap Betts and guarantee a lawyer to every poor person charged with a serious crime?
Which brings us to the court's reasoning. And when the decision came down, it wasn't even close.
It was unanimous, 9-0. The court flat out said the right to counsel is fundamental and essential for a fair trial. Betts v. Brady was officially gone.
And the core of their logic was this idea of the adversarial system, right? Let's translate that.
Yeah, that's the key. Think of it like this. Our justice system is designed to be a contest, a fight to find the truth.
Okay, a contest.
On one side, you have the government. It has police, investigators, and professional prosecutors. It has massive resources.
And on the other side, you have, well, you.
You. And if you have money, you hire your own champion, your own lawyer to make it a fair fight. The court basically said that if a poor person has to enter that fight alone, it's not a contest at all.
It's a slaughter. The outcome is predetermined.
Exactly. The court used this famous phrase that a defendant needs the guiding hand of counsel to navigate the system. Without that guide, you're lost. You don't know how to challenge evidence. You don't know how to question witnesses. The whole thing is a procedural maze.
A lawyer isn't a luxury, then. They're the instruction manual for the whole process.
They're a necessity. The court said without one, the trial itself loses its integrity. The risk of a wrongful conviction is just too high.
So let's get into the legal mechanics for a second. The right to a lawyer is in the Sixth Amendment, but that was originally just for federal courts. How did the court make this apply to states like Florida?
Right, that's a great question. They used the 14th Amendment.
Okay.
There's a part of it called the Due Process Clause, which says states can't deprive anyone of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. The court had already decided this means states have to protect rights that are fundamental to liberty and justice.
So they just decided that the right to a lawyer was one of those fundamental rights.
Exactly. They said a fair trial is fundamental to liberty, and you can't have a fair trial without a lawyer. So the 14th Amendment basically acts like a bridge, carrying that Sixth Amendment right over and applying it to every single state.
So no more patchwork justice. One rule for the entire country, which leads us right into the legacy. What happened after this decision?
Well, first, the winner was obviously Clarence Gideon.
Right. What happened to him?
His case was sent back to Florida for a new trial. This time he had a court-appointed lawyer, and he was acquitted.
Wow. All charges dropped.
Found not guilty. I mean, that fact alone just shows you the difference a lawyer makes. The system actually worked the second time.
And the broader winner.
Every single indigent defendant in America. This decision is the bedrock of our entire public defender system. The idea that your access to justice shouldn't depend on your wallet, that comes directly from Gideon.
Which is why we still talk about this case constantly.
Yeah.
Because it immediately raises the next question. Is just any lawyer enough?
And that is the critical evolution. Gideon established the right to a lawyer. The decades since have been about defining the right to an effective lawyer.
The effective assistance of counsel.
Exactly. The sources point to later cases that set up standards. I mean, what if your court-appointed lawyer is incompetent or doesn't do any work?
Or falls asleep during the trial.
It happens. So courts have had to create tests to determine if a lawyer's performance was so bad that it violated the defendant's constitutional rights. It's a direct ripple effect of Gideon.
But this is also where we have to acknowledge the nuance, the part that's still debated today.
Oh, absolutely. The right is on the books, but making it real takes money. A lot of money.
You mean funding public defender offices?
Right. And in many states, those offices are swamped. Public defenders have caseloads that are just impossible. They're underfunded. They're overworked. So while you have a right to a body with a law degree, are you truly getting that guiding hand of counsel the Supreme Court talked about?
It seems like we've established the constitutional floor, but we're still arguing about how high the ceiling should be. The right exists on paper, but the quality of that right in practice, that's the ongoing struggle.
That is the tension of Gideon's legacy. It created an essential system, but it didn't magically solve the problem of how to resource it properly.
Okay, so let's bring this all together. A break-in at a pool hall in Florida, a stubborn defendant with a pencil, and a Supreme Court ready to make a change. The result is a landmark ruling that reshaped American justice, making fairness less about what's in your bank account.
And the big so what here is that the court recognized that our adversarial system is just too lopsided without this guarantee. For the system to have any claim to finding the truth, the state's power has to be matched.
The ultimate lesson seems to be that if you believe in that contest, that fight for the truth, then you have to make the fight fair. The Constitution demands it.
Well said.
But that leaves us with one final provocative thought. We've talked about effective counsel. And the sources show that a good lawyer is supposed to catch things, bad evidence, a flawed indictment. So if a defendant's appointed lawyer is just too new or too overworked to spot a critical error that could have won the case, how far does the state's duty to provide a fair trial really go? Does the promise of Gideon mean you just get a lawyer, or does it demand a lawyer who's good enough to actually win? That's something to mull over.
You've been listening to The Daily Brief, one landmark court decision explained in plain English every day. Presented by findcourtcases.com, this is your daily briefing on the law that shapes American life. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow with the next case.